Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You may recall in a recent video, kind of recent, we did a 3D printing test where we showed you how to make a mold through Shaper 3D, and then we printed it in Soraya tenacious resin. Make sure you go check out that video because, well, the results weren't really that great. Tenacious is not a truly flexible resin. It's actually more of a raw resin. The thing that tenacious lacks, though, compared to a truly flexible material, is that it doesn't have the rubbery consistency of, well, actual rubber. We decided that this was definitely worth investigating, and we reached out to our friends at ApplyLabWork, who not only produce a really great direct-to-cast resin, one that we use a lot in our studio and definitely advocate for. They also produce a wide variety of engineered resins. So they sent us a couple bottles of Spring Black for us to try. So we had fun printing with Spring, obviously, and unlike Tenacious, Spring is actually a truly flexible resin. On the ApplyLabWorks website, they include examples like squeegees, which is actually this guy. It kind of got torn. This was part of our durability test. A little bit more on that in a second. They have these squeegees, which are really, really good for, scraping down the FEP foil when you're done a print and you're trying to clean out your resin vat. They also have a puffer ball type thing, like what you might use to clean your 3D printing screen or a camera lens or something like that. They also have tires. This is actually one that we did try to print. It didn't work out really very well because it suffers from cupping. And there's also a bunch of other flexible items. So some of the things that I designed and printed for my own use, I printed some feet, some flexible rubber feet for my Prusa Mini. I also printed some stamps. These ones are actually backwards. I forgot to mirror them when I printed them. However, I figured, for the sake of durability tests, good to have. And as you can see, it's definitely a stiff durometer. Durometer is actually how you measure, for lack of a better term, squishiness, something like RTV. And I don't know exactly what durometer these are, but they are, I would say, medium stiff and definitely resistant to tearing. As you can see, I'm really putting a lot of effort into to try to break this, and it is perfectly fine. It's returned to flat. Everything about it is really, really good. So based off of the level of flexibility that we're viewing in this material, we had really high hopes for the second round of investigation. And we really hoped that ApplyLab Spring was going to work out really well. I have printed a few molds. We reprinted the original mold. This is the Soraya tenacious one that we've injected, and as you can see, it does suffer from some flat issues. It doesn't quite sit together perfectly, and because it's not flexible, it's really difficult to get into, to separate. You actually need kind of like a pry tool to get into this. This is the same mold printed as this one, printed in the Spring. And you can see here, it comes apart much easier. Everything is flexible. And when it comes to the pattern removal, much, much easier. It actually does have a little bit of a stick to the wax, but not so much that if you just kind of give it a quick bend, it doesn't pop out. And this is a really, really good injection. It has a nice glassy surface. Everything that needed to be there is there. And the only thing it really suffered from, and I think this is due to the fact that the halves have such a hard line in between them, there's a little bit of flashing along that seam. But again, that is something that you can fix in software without too many problems. We acknowledged that when we moved on to our second design. So the second design, we moved away from the signet ring. Signet rings are definitely one of the safest, simplest types of models that we could have tried to make a mold of. This one actually had some stone settings. We actually use this model as an engagement ring in pretty much all of our castable resin video reviews. So you've probably seen this one before. Now, the results were hit or miss, frankly. The exposure times for ApplyLabWork Spring are not really ridiculous. I think we did 30-second as a base and 5-second layers after that. But where it really gets weird is how far the build plate has to retract from the FEP because this flexible resin has an incredibly high amount of adhesion to the FEP. A normal amount of separation distance is about 5 to 8 millimeters, give or take. With spring, we had to retract it by about 28 millimeters. That is a little bit overkill, but still, like, we actually visibly saw the whole thing rising up, and then when it finally separated, go whoomp, right back down. When I used the more standard 5 to 8 millimeter retraction, we had some really bizarre things happen. For starters, because, well, this mold turned out a little bit too small for my liking, and it did have its own issues. I upsized it, just simply using In-Situ Box. I upsized it by, I think, 40% to 140. And yeah, this happened. This is not supposed to look like this. The FEP basically stuck so well to this that even as it retracted, it just kept stretching. It's really hard to describe because there are aspects that printed well and many more that really didn't. Also, it's not supposed to be an inch thick. So exactly what happened, a bit beyond me, but I reached out to ApplyLabs to get a little bit of help after this, and they gave me some really good advice, such as increasing that retraction to about 28 millimeters. After figuring out the appropriate retraction distance, the molds printed rather well. I went from this ultra chunky model to, this is the exact same thing, by the way, down to this one. This one is a much better thickness. However, it had a few other issues that I had to deal with. For starters, this insert for the stone setting crown, the actual piece that holds the diamond, it warped somehow. It doesn't really fit into the model the way I designed it to. In general, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I feel like the decision that we made to do this particular stone setting model was a little bit too ambitious because this resin, as you might imagine with these elongation issues, does struggle with some of the fine details. And the details that we picked were definitely very, very fine. But I feel like this model was good enough to try injecting just to see, what could we improve upon? Maybe the locking system doesn't quite work. Maybe this whole crown idea needs to be tossed. So we gave it a shot, and these were our results of injecting. So overall, this experiment was definitely a step in the right direction up from Soriatec Tenacious. However, it is still not up to the high quality standards that I would come to expect from a traditional RTV or vulcanized rubber mold. There are companies developing flexible mold or flexible resins for just this process. The only one that really comes to mind, though, is B9 Creations, and I don't have their resin to try. It's also designed for their high-end DLP machines, so I'm not even really sure if it's going to work on MSLA. This resin in particular benefits from a totally different kind of printing solution, not the kind with FEP, but the top-down method, where you have a projector above the resin vat and the model itself gets lowered slowly so that you don't have any supports. On the note of supports, you probably don't actually see any on any of these models because the resin will physically form the supports, but the supports are essentially noodles. They can't actually support anything. So you're rather limited in the kind of prints that you can make. Just make sure that you bear in mind some of the trials and issues that we ran into already, that the models need to be 100% self-supporting and the mold in the external space inside has to be relatively simple. And don't discount all the other things that we've come up with. This particular tire design didn't work out, but there's others that you can try if you're into RC cars. This stuff is definitely really grippy, as I mentioned with these feet. Using this on my printer. And if you were like a woodworker or something, maybe you want to 3D print your own custom feet for your work. That would be really, really cool. You could have them like actually trace around, like a live edge leg or something. Who knows? The sky's the limit. I find the most useful thing for us that was really rather unexpected actually was the stamp. Being able to just have our own custom branded stamp to literally put everywhere helps a lot with our branding and just trying to add a little Easter egg here and there. And it's just really neat. And actually, ApplyLab sent me an email recently of a use case where they've developed spring in not just black, but also pink. And they were able to 3D print I believe it's a capillary Not really sure what the term is, but the internals of a lung. And because it's flexible, when the medical students actually put air into it, it expanded in a creepily real way. So there will be a link in the description below for the ApplyLabWorks website where you can grab yourself a bottle of spring. I believe it goes for about 99 USD for one 1 kilogram bottle in either black or pink, along with many of their other resins, including one of our favorite direct-to-cast resins. Just to note that this video is not sponsored by ApplyLabs in any way. They did send us the resin for free, but all of our opinions are our own. If you've used a flexible resin successfully, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you made it work and some of the things that you made. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. We'll be glad to help you through either with the flexible spring resin as best we can, or of course, as our channel typically works with a lot of casting resins, feel free to reach out about that, or studio setup, the casting process, printing, waxes, literally whatever you want. Give our membership program a consideration as well, where you have access to me on a more one-on-one basis through our Discord group, where we can arrange a call, try to diagnose some of the issues that you're having, and get you back on the right track. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.